Hello and welcome to our election day version of Path to Power, the podcast. I'm Matt Cooper.
And I'm Ivan Yates.
This is a bit like Christmas for the two of us. Hopefully it is for you as well. Oh, you're smirking a little bit of that. Not Christmas for you? Do you not feel tidings of joy when it comes to election day?
No, it seems like New Year's Day or something where you're just partying too much. Exactly. No, it's just gone on too long. Well, I mean, like, we've been in election mode since early summer here on Path to Power. And like, people say it was a short campaign, but actually since the summer holidays were over, it has been intensive politics.
That's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because what does strike me is, yes, it was what by conventional means is a short campaign of 3 weeks, but it's not. The campaign has been going on from the budget on the 1st of October, and essentially was going on even in the run-up to the budget.
The conventions and all of that, which was a lot of, that was all to be completed by mid-September. Remember, manifestos. That's when a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of people who ran as independents were defeated in those conventions. So the jockeying for position on the turn for home was pretty intense.
But is this the point, though, that for those of us who are interested in politics or who are involved in politics, we were all caught up in that. But for an enormous amount of people, the people who vote, they weren't playing the blindest bit of notice. They had lots of other things to be getting on with. And they only started really paying attention in the last couple of weeks. And this is the thing that I think interests me in relation to particularly Sinn Féin and Fine Gael's positions, because Fine Gael has been caught up in all of the controversies of the campaign. I think all of the talking points have arisen out of what you might call Fine Gael gaffes. Sinn Féin, in the run-up to the call in the election, was caught up in loads of controversies between the Brian Stanley issue, Niall O'Donnell, the former senator, various things. And it's almost as if that didn't matter too much to a large part of the electorate because they weren't paying attention. But what's been happening to Fine Gael in the last couple of weeks does matter because they're focusing on it.
Well, let me ask you, with your editor hat on, what, if I was to name anything at all you like, what for you were the three most newsworthy stories, sort of almost if any in brackets after that, of the election? Just three. If you're writing, we'll put this on the front lead, what would it be?
The Kanturk incident with Charlotte Fallon, the carer, was for me absolutely the number one incident.
After that?
I just want to talk a little bit about that, because there aren't many more. Right? Because I put it to you, I think the Michael O'Leary controversies were a bit contrived. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure they were particularly important. I think the John McGahon one is interesting as well, about the judgment of Fine Gael in selecting somebody who had been found 65% liable in a civil case. No matter what happened in the criminal case, 65% liable. So those are sort of the other big issues. But let's focus on what happened in Kanturk, because it happened last Friday night after we had recorded and released last week's edition of Path to Power and the subscriber edition as well. And a couple of things struck me about it. One was what it may have said about Simon Harris. And I think people, going on, he doesn't really care about disability and autism and things like that, despite saying he does. And I think he does. I think he is genuine in relation to that. What I thought it revealed was a thin skin when it comes to criticism. And that is the trait that I think perhaps a lot of people looking would not necessarily have liked. That when somebody was willing to confront him, the manner in which he actually almost was dismissive of her. Now, you could say maybe he was hangry, he was at the end of a long day, he wasn't eating, but that's what you have to do. And it also raises questions about his energy, because if Fine Gael is pushing itself in relation to his new energy, so what happens when the energy fizzles and runs out? What has he got left then? So those were the things that for me came up out of that. But what also came up, and I think this shows how media is changing and people's consumption of how many people would actually have seen that on the 9 o'clock news on RTE Friday night? The numbers would be quite limited.
Or on any news.
Or in any news, right? But the issue was it got amplified on social media and it got shared. And I met lots of people at the weekend who hadn't seen it until it popped up on their phone. And then they had a look at it. And then it was like, oh, look at that. So there's context. And then you get the thing as well, which we'll maybe get to in a minute, about how Fine Gael allegedly tried to get RTE to handle it, which wasn't a good look either. But what did you make? Would that be your moment of the campaign?
Well, certainly, like, perception is reality. If it's your moment, then I take it that is the moment, because like you're looking at it from a news desk point of view. So first of all, I think twice on this podcast I predicted that there will be an incident. This man has been on the run since May, 18 agricultural shows, and I didn't know whether it was going to be a custard pie or what it was going to be, but it was going to be
that happened to Michael Noonan.
It did in 2002.
Yeah.
But there's going to be some incident whereby the new energy is going to be derailed just on the basis of sheer humanity. A man in a hurry, you're going to hit a banana skin at some stage. So I absolutely anticipated that, and I felt that Fine Gael's reliance on Brand Harris to the expense of previously, before you had Leo and Simon and Pascal and a whole array of people, Heather and so on, it was a solo, operation was high risk. But the second thing is that political gravity always reasserts itself. And the political gravity is 14 years of Fine Gael in power continuously, and secondly, 18 retirements, 390 years of constituency work flushed down the toilet, where a new councillor or entirely new person is on the ballot paper. Like, you just cannot defy those two heavyweight gravity factors. And so therefore, I honestly believe that Fine Gael at 26% was an aberration, that they were on 20% in the last general election, they were on 22% in the local elections. And, my advice consistently was, this is not a hop, it's a honeymoon. It will fade. And therefore, you should have had a September election. Just wait till the weather goes bad. And this was and if he'd left till February, it would have been even worse. So, first of all, I accept that from a talking point of view and the perception, the McGahn thing is just as interesting, insofar as that I've done a lot of work on the Louth constituency, and my feeling was Fergus O'Dowd stepping down, Fitzpatrick, ex-Fine Gael, stepping down. This guy is a senator. It's a bit like John Cummins in Waterford. There's been a long-term strategy that he would be the sole candidate, that he'd stay in the count long enough, and I had seen polling data to say that his position was secure. He's worked really hard on it. He's had the Senate base. He has an office in Dundalk, and nearly all the new candidates who got traction, like Sinn Féin's Joanna Byrne, Jed Nash, Kevin Cowan, are all droghad aside. So basically, his only competition other than Rory O'Murrough was a Cooley Peninsula candidate, Erin McGeehan. So I thought, and even when I inquired in Louth, what's the story in relation to the localised version of the McGahn thing? Is he canvassing? And it was quite funny because we're recording this at a time before you've done the interview with Simon Harris. He was looking for an excuse not to go to Louth today, I think, to avoid, because everyone said...
I know, in fairness, I'm not being used now as an excuse not to go to Louth. This was booked early last week.
But he doesn't want to be photographed with McGahn, is my point. I've now changed my view that such is the enormity of the gravity against McGahn that Fianna Fáil will probably end up getting that one government seat between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, which is a change in my position. So those two incidents have really been albatrosses around the neck.
Can I ask you also about Fine Gael? One thing that struck me, I don't know if this has struck you, but in the last few days, that Fine Gael, having, as you correctly say, emphasised Simon Harris, my God, they're pushing Pascal Donoghue out a lot, aren't they? And suddenly, the man that they didn't make deputy leader when Heather Humphrey stepped down because they decided it was better to put Helen McEntee, she is not exactly hiding in the shadows, but she's not particularly prominent in their campaign. It's Pascal on the economy coming out all the time. I wonder, will that actually win? I mean, this is one of the things that is interesting. I mean, I think the point that you make about incumbency is absolutely valid. And I keep getting amused as well. And this podcast will be going out after I've had the opportunity to interview Simon Harris. But I started doing almost like a bingo card on the debate the other night as to how many times would he say...
This is the three-way debate.
The three-way debate. Okay. As in, I'm only Taoiseach for 7 months. I mean, how many times over the 7 months has he reminded that he's only been Taoiseach for so long a period of time? As if... this has changed everything, that everything's different just because he's Taoiseach. He has been a government minister since 2016. He was a junior minister before that. He is establishment himself. And this idea that he's shiny and new is only superficial, I would suggest to you.
Yeah, no, and the fact of the matter is that, when I spoke to Fine Gael people and I said, at the end of August, you should really go for a September election. And they turned around and said to me, look what he's done in 3 months. What'll he do in another 5 months? I said, it doesn't quite work like that, because you're no longer new. You know the attritional nature of government. And so therefore...
In fact, he could have gone to the country saying that he was seeking a mandate as a new direction, with that new energy.
What I'm saying is the aberration was the honeymoon, the reality of where Fine Gael brand has been for some time. So they had a high point of 36% in 2011 with the implosion of Fianna Fáil. And it has been on a steady descent.
Can I just say actually something on that? I remember thinking it at the time, and I bring it up again, that considering the extent of the collapse of Fianna Fáil at the time, and given the state the country was in, that 36% was not as successful as they should have been at the time.
Well, Gilmore Gale was very strong. They got another 18%. Combined, they had a huge majority, remember. But look, just on Fianna Fáil, tell me... Sorry,
actually, do you believe the polls? I mean, the polls do all show a degree of similarity, don't they? We had the Red Sea poll from the Business Post on Wednesday evening. We'd had the Irish Times poll on Monday, and we had the Sunday Independent last Sunday. And everything, remember, is a margin of over 3%. But they all came in pretty much very close to each other, didn't they?
Okay, well, let me tell you why I don't have any faith in the polls, other than general sense. If you're to talk to a Kerry person, over 40% of the vote in Kerry will be for independence, the Healy-Rae. So if you did anywhere in the south there, they will be getting in some boxes 50%. Let's go to Donegal, or even any of the border counties. Sinn Féin, in my view, are guaranteed 2 seats, Cavan Monaghan, Louth and Donegal. And we'll get 2 quotas. So there you have... If you ask a Donegal person, odds are 40% there. If you go to Rathdown or Dunleary, Fine Gael are north of 30%. How can a poll of 1,200 people pick up those massive variations on geography alone? The fact of the matter is that, and I remember just on the presidential election in the US, I actually, because I couldn't believe it, Nate Silver had this poll that in one particular state, Trump was down 6%, but on every poll of the swing states, it had it. I think that was Iowa. It was a draw. And I read then, I think Sir Kenny sent me a copy of a Nate Silver poll, and they'd done 80,000 algorithms to assess it, and it was too close to call. He won the popular vote, and he won every one of the swing states.
He did win, actually. When the final tallies came in, Trump won by a narrow margin.
Very tight. No, I accept that.
And the popular vote, he won by... This idea that he had a landslide is absolutely a myth.
Okay, so I take your bias on that, but the point I'm trying to make is the polls...
I'm actually talking about the facts.
But the polls got it wrong.
Yeah.
And the reason they got it wrong, and the reason why I felt Trump would outperform the polls, is that a lot of people, and you're even going to find with the exit poll on Friday night, people don't necessarily admit the way they're going to vote and I think the polls have consistently underestimated Fianna Fáil, and underestimated by about 2 or 3%. And the fact that they have them just nipping ahead on 21% says to me that they're much nearer to 24% if I take all the biases of the polls.
And might the polls be underestimating Sinn Féin, or could Sinn Féin's...
Correct.
But could Sinn Féin's problem be that they're not transfer friendly and that they won't get the seat bonus on the...
Well, you see, the problem is this, and this is where I think people have missed the point. We spoke about fragmentation. So it's 20%, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Independence, Sinn Féin, and we'll take the soft left together. So there's 5 silos of independence.
All of around, but there's actually effectively 5 silos of 20%.
That's right, that's my point.
So yeah, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil, Sinn Féin, an independent bloc,
and
then
soft left.
The parties at the left, Soc Dems, Labour, Greens.
Progressives, we call them.
Okay.
Right. But actually, when you drill down into that, just take the Sinn Féin silo. In 2020, there are people who are now unaligned independents, but they're actually far right. They're ex-SF. All of Eventual is ex-SF. So not only do you have gene pool, FG and FF of people throughout the country who are defeated.
Gene pool Sinn Féin.
Yeah, exactly. So we've moved from fragmentation to splintering, whereby now maybe as the counts go on, these will come back to them. But like at the end of the day, that is why nobody on any poll is hitting 25%, which, is the lowest of low bars relative to, historically speaking, when we're in a 2.5 party system.
The political scientist Aidan Regan from UCD put up an interesting tweet the other day, which I saved just to put to you. He said, "It's remarkable to think that just over 15 years ago, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael took 70% of the vote and held close to 130 seats in the Dáil. Now they need each other and potentially two other parties to form a parliamentary majority. How times have changed."
And the reason for that is, over the last 100 years that Mary Lou goes on about, and I could bring you to these people today who would be considered we'll just take a parish, Ballindagan in Enniscorthy, right? Farmers or whatever. That's a Fine Gael family, that's a Fianna Fáil family. Go, and they're now almost a floating vote. Their father would have been a canvasser. Their grandfather would have been involved in the Civil War. With each passing decade, the dilution of the strength of the Civil War parties, Collins and Dev, has been an ongoing evolution of Irish politics, and it has resulted in a weakening of their brands and maybe a move towards, on one side, FFFG saying we favour an enterprise economy, market-orientated economy, which would be sort of like the Tory position, or we'd say the Republican position, and a more left-wing disposition of saying, no, the state should do A, B and C.
We're going to take a break. If you want to avoid the ads, then you can be a subscriber. And indeed, just to let you know that if you are already a subscriber, or if you decide now to subscribe, there will be a special bonus edition coming to you on Sunday afternoon. Ivan and myself are going to come into studio on Sunday afternoon to assess the results up until that point, and to give you an indication of how we think things are panning out based on first counts and various other things that have happened to date in the election. So that's a bonus edition for subscribers, which is ad-free, which we will be bringing to you on Sunday afternoon. But back for more of this edition after this quick break. Welcome back to Path to Power. And actually, I was just mentioning before the break there, Ivan, about we'll be coming in Sunday afternoon to do our subscriber edition. By that stage, how much do you reckon we will actually know? Because I'm going to the Rugby International tomorrow afternoon, Ireland against Australia, and I'm wondering, it's hard a part of me going like, how much am I going to miss? But will I be missing much, do you think, on Saturday afternoon?
Well, normally, heretofore, the situation was the first counts would be in by tea time on the first day of counting. Yeah. The situation is, I think you can go to midnight before the first counts will be completed. They're much quicker in the three-seaters, right? But to get to the last seat, I remember going into RT at 9 o'clock on Monday night for the Katie Hannon show after the 6th of June voting. And only while I was in studio did the first count for Dublin, for MEP South come in. The fact of the matter is, the final count, which will be a kingmaker is eliminated and their transfers will decide the direction. There's two remaining candidates which will get it. I think we'll go into Monday.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to Sunday and Monday, so I'll be back on radio on Monday to be able to do the sort of the sweeping up and the final counts. Let's talk about the other particular parties, and let's talk a little bit about Sinn Féin, because it was Mary Lou McDonald was in with me during the week, and I think Mary Lou McDonald has certainly regained a certain amount of her zest during the campaign. And she is the type of person, she seems to be like going out and meeting people on the canvas and shaking hands, and she was certainly in good form when she came in the other day. But I did put it to her, and I think this is relevant, and it goes back to the point that you made about having lost certain voters, that after 4.5 years of opposition, after 4.5 years of saying we are the people who should be put in government, and continuing to campaign on the basis we are your only alternative for government, are they really? Because if she doesn't match the 24.5% first preference vote they got in 2020 after these 4.5 years, and if there is this great discontent with the government that might become clear, then isn't that a failure on the party Sinn Féin to not actually be able to match what it did in 2020? And even if it does match it, and I'm not taking the polls as gospel, even if she does match it, is that a failure in the sense that it doesn't put them in a strong position to lead talks to form a government?
Well, the first thing is that, they had a near-death experience in the local elections.
Did that matter?
Well, put it like this, from their point of view, to get 12% of the vote, having been looking like you had the prospect of being the largest party by far, they got the most votes by far in the last election, and it's very hard to get your mojo back from that. And to lose the MEP in Midlands Northwest was a serious blow to them. So From that point, I think there has been a real consolidation over the period of the campaign. There's a lot of people who don't take politics that seriously, who zone in and zone out, maybe the couple of days before voting, and they just said, look, I'm against the status quo. Who am I going to vote for? I'm going to vote Sinn Féin. And therefore, I can see seats that I couldn't call, like the last one in Carlow Kilkenny, by the new hybrid constituency, Wicklow Wexford. I think brand Sinn Féin at 20-something% guarantees them a seat.
Yes, Mary Lou MacDonald went to Carlow Kilkenny on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Now, they've looked at these particular areas and say, we've got a shot now.
Absolutely. So, and like, this is in the context of both their female candidates, one in Carlow, one in Kilkenny, couldn't get elected to the local elections. You're saying, where are you going looking to get 10,000 votes? Kathleen Funchion having gone to Europe. So I certainly think they have consolidated.
Sorry, does that mean that essentially history will repeat itself to a certain degree, that candidates who did not do well in the local elections will come through in the general election on the back of the Sinn Féin brand?
Yeah.
The Sinn Féin brand.
Sorry, with this caveat, so they got 24.5%, nearly 25%, minus 5% for the far right. Like, they were getting all the tricolour, turn traitor vote, and that's now lost to them. So, we could name out candidates, Sutcliffe, Holohan, Gavin Pepper, and so on. 5 years ago, they did not exist as a political campaign, and they were Sinn Féin. They were disaffected in very deprived areas. So that is a real problem for them, and they're not getting that back.
Sorry, actually, just again, I keep interrupting, my apologies. I'm fascinated by the Phil Sutcliffe one. Phil Sutcliffe is a former international boxer, and he's a councillor, elected a councillor in Dublin City Council, and he was standing for Independent Ireland. Again, how did Independent Ireland not know about his close connections to Conor McGregor? Even before he turned up in court last week for the outcome of the civil trial Nikita Hand took against Conor McGregor, how did Independent Ireland not know about the close connections? Did that show that there was a failure of vetting? Did Independent Ireland do the right thing in the aftermath of the Conor McGregor situation? And I wonder, what would a significant vote for Phil Sutcliffe? I don't see any circumstances in which he'll be in contention to win a seat.
Well, 2 weeks ago, I think he was. So South Central is a 4-seater. It's very competitive. So Breed Smith has stepped down. Hazel de Nortune is really fancied to take her seat. Angus O'Snuddy. They had 2 quotas there last night. They actually had, someone else said 1.8, they actually had 2 quotas there, and they're running 3, Daithí Doolan and I think it's Devine, I'm not sure, but basically I think there's only 1 seat for them. Can Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil at last scrape a seat together? I think Mary's series elimination will get Catherine Arda there this time.
I think Fianna Fáil are confident about Catherine Arda.
Yeah. So put it like this: that's 3 seats. I don't see Sutcliffe, but put it like this: he was definitely in the frame with Dara Moriarty of Labour there. I don't see that happening anymore. So my call on South Central is Angus O'Snuddy, Hazel de Nortune, Catherine Arda and Joan Collins to hold on.
Okay, but hold on. What would it say about things if there are significant votes for Phil Sutcliffe after what we saw about him supporting Conor McGregor and the monk, Jerry Hutch, in Dublin Central? What would that actually say about attitudes among sections of the electorate?
That there is a hard core of disenfranchised people who really want to put on instead of ticking some, they want to put FO. And off is the second word. That's what they want to put on their ballot paper. And that a vote for them is a vote for that.
Let's go back to the party leaders, because we've spoken about Simon Harris, we've spoken about Mary Lou MacDonald. Do you think, has Micheál Martin had a good campaign in your view?
I think it's been relatively error-free. I think that there is a feeling inside government that, you said thin-skinned about Harris, that he's been a bit impetuous at times. They tell this story, I don't know whether it's true, that he went on the 6-1 and Pascal absolutely had a conniption because he made on the hoof a promise about child benefit which hadn't been agreed at Cabinet, and they kind of felt they had to go with it once he'd said it. I don't know the full details of it, but the point I'm making is this. There is a sense, I think, because, you crashed the economy in 2007 and 8 and all that good stuff. And he was in Cabinet then, that actually he's wiser for that experience, and that if something happened Trump reshoring, corporation tax, you kind of feel he's the adult of the room in this sense, that he would break manifesto promises not to go bust again. I don't think you get that feeling with anyone else.
Well, actually, it's an interesting point. I mean, can anyone ever be forgiven for being part of the government that was in place when the crash actually happened?
You're a no redemption person.
No, I'm not saying I'm asking a question, because I'm wondering, because many of the people who make that claim are prepared to offer Sinn Féin figures redemption for their involvement in the IRA.
Yeah, well, I'm like this. The way I operate is that for contrition and humility, and this is what I train people, you're entitled to redemption. That's the deal.
Yeah.
No, if you're a virtue signalling person, you won't agree with that.
But no, it's an interesting point of question. What do you learn from? I mean, like, you know, they say in sport and in business and in life that you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes.
One thing that is a legacy there is that I can see Munster, outside of the greater Dublin area, Fianna Fáil are doing very well. And are certainly surging. Their problem is in Dublin. You go through hardworking TDs like Paul McAuliffe, Cormac Devlin, they're not guaranteed a seat. Then you have the trio of Shay Brennan, Mary Fitzpatrick, Lorraine Clifford-Lee, who have been knocking on the door, and Catherine Arda.
Who tried to win seats.
And lost. They lost in 2016, they lost in 2020. And sorry, which part of this do you not learn from your mistakes? So therefore, all of those are bellwethers to whether Fianna Fáil... See, it ended up in 2011, they only got one seat, which is Brian Lennon's seat. So that was devastation for them. And the Achilles heel of Fianna Fáil in this election is in Dublin and the greater Dublin area, the commuter belt. So they lost seats. They lost 2 seats in Kildare last time.
They're worried. And I mean, we're on a podcast, so we're not sort of bound by the sort of the some of the rules that apply to broadcasting and stuff, so we can speculate about certain constituencies. The fact that Micheál Martin has been canvassing for Jim O'Callaghan in the last couple of weeks, would that suggest
he's in that category as well?
They're worried about him.
Well, he's not safe. He's not safe. But put it like this: the feeling is that half of those are winnable, mostly around incumbency, and the other half are in jeopardy. But there is no doubt Fine Gael's strongest area is in middle-class Dublin.
Just broadening it out a little bit, I think it was Pat Leahy in the Irish Times last Saturday was writing about the importance of the TV debate could be seismic on Tuesday night, the primetime debate. My feeling is that it probably changed very, very little, that it actually was something of a damp squib.
Yeah.
Overall.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I just don't see that nobody made a particularly big impression that would have swung people around to him or her.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone performed particularly badly that would have moved themselves away from him or her. There were bits of sniping towards the end of it, and there were a few zingers, but towards the end, and hopefully people were still watching it.
Okay.
I was sort of watching it out of a sense of duty towards the end, because I knew I needed to do so for work. And you know,
but you are more interested in the match than the election this week. Let's be fair.
What do you mean?
No, well, insofar as that politics per se, you know, it's your job as a presenter, as a columnist, and all that kind of thing. But you'd rather be anywhere else, really.
Not at all. I don't know why you get.
No, but you're not an anorak insofar as that I actually feel a lot of empathy for these politicians. I actually like them, you know, and I you know, like even for Mary Lou or any of them, like take Holly Kearns. I think it's a it really has affected the Soc Dem campaign that she has not been physically able to campaign, and I think it's gonna be unfortunate in the results.
I'm actually in shock, Ivan, that you've actually described yourself as an empathetic person and implied that I'm not.
Well, sorry, I wouldn't overdo the empathy. It is a blood sport after all. But no, but the point is, I can get into their heads. So overall, this is where I want to pitch it.
Oh, sorry, just on the TV debates. Sorry, I haven't finished in the TV debates.
I thought it wasn't a decisive factor.
No, it wasn't decisive. But I wonder again, and I say this as somebody who had, in association with Sky News, pitched the idea for a leaders' debate where we would have actually focused on very different issues. I think we would have had much more of an international outlook, looking at, obviously, what's going on internationally at the moment is going to very much impact on our economic circumstances. And I think there's an air of unreality in a lot of the claims that have been made by the political parties, which I think overall will contribute to the degree of cynicism about politics, in that they go into elections promising the earth, moon, sun and stars, everything.
childcare, you name it, yeah.
And the money isn't going to be there to do all of that. Actually, the money is one aspect of it. It's not going to be there to do everything, because I don't think we can assume. I'm not sure the windfall taxes are going to disappear, the corporation taxes, but they could be severely impacted, and that throws the finances into doubt. And the second thing is, and I think a lot of people have been getting in touch with me about this, and they're saying things like, how are they actually going to do all the things that they promise, even if they have all the money? So, for example, have you got enough construction workers to build all the houses? Because the last time we had 50 to 90,000 houses built, we were bringing loads of people in from Eastern Europe, many of whom were younger lads who were living together in houses in reasonably, Spartan conditions, but they were happy to get a lot of cash that they could bring back to Eastern Europe. So where are you going to get the people to do all the building? And if you want to fill all the roles as Gardaí, as nurses, as childcare workers, as social workers, where are all these people suddenly going to materialise from, and where are they going to be able to get affordable housing? And I think a lot of people know that an awful lot of the things, yes, in utopia, if Ireland was utopia, we'd want all these things, but how can we afford it, and how can we get the people to fill all the roles?
So I spent all of last Tuesday doing a property conference, and you had the best brains. So take people like Elkstone Finance. Take people like Activate Capital. These are the people who, so it's 24 billion is required to build 60,000 houses a year. The state is going to max out at 8 billion. Where do you get the 16 billion? These are the people you ring with the capital. And they said, look, these pension funds, it's very simple. They want a stable environment, and they want a return of 7 to 8% per year. That's what they want, whether you like it or not. And they'll go elsewhere or put money into other things, be it equity capital, put it into other properties or other countries. And, it's FDI for property. And they said to me, all the things, rent freezes, all of these things, even the rent cap, they said, is inimical to them in terms of it's 2% or the lower of inflation. So now they can only raise rent by 0.7%, which is inflation rate. They said, we just have no interest in committing long-term capital to that type of environment. So that's number one. Number two, is there enough zoned land? Nobody has mentioned planning reform, radical planning reform, to facilitate the development of 300,000 houses. Where are they going to be built? There will be objectors to all those. They will head to the High Court, even after on Bord Planola. Who is going to face down that? So in all of these areas, I've actually been living in two parallel universes about housing. One, where the political debate is, and then the real world of the people like Glenveigh, like Cairn, like Ballymore, who actually build the houses. And they say, Ivan, we mightn't get to 40,000 houses next year the way it's going.
Well, you see, then some of the other political leaders that we haven't mentioned that I've been interviewing as well, Ivana Bacik, Cian O'Callaghan on behalf of Holly Cairns as her deputy, Richard Boyd Barrett, they're all talking about a state construction company. And you sort of
good luck with that, yeah.
Yeah, you look at them and go, really? And then the money thing is, they keep saying that there is a role for the private sector and privately sold housing, but then they don't explain how it is when they say it, how they would actually do that when they're going to put constraints on rents and stuff. And the other thing that I've been pointing out to them quite a lot is that just as often, if you are looking to buy a house on a new development, or if you're looking to buy a new apartment, and the way it's finished, you're losing out because the vultures, the institutions, are buying them out from under your nose. Well, it's as likely that the state is doing it. Approved housing bodies or various other parts of the state apparatus. So I've been aware of things like in Meath and Kildare. People see brand new estates going, oh, this is great, this will be my chance to buy. And then they discover, well, no, the state, because it's failing to do its own job in social and affordable housing, buys all these up.
So there was two particular people I interviewed, one was, in 2022, we built 9,000 units in Dublin city centre, Cork Street and so on, which were either co-living or build to rent, which is really sort of 20 square metres per head. This has been banned since 2023. It's been banned. And so therefore, there is no units going. And then there was this lady I interviewed, and I said, how's it going? She said, well, I'm a vulture fund. How do you think I feel in the present time? In other words...
She wasn't looking for sympathy, was she?
No. What she was looking for was, this 15% stamp duty, 17% stamp duty. What's my bid on this? They were saying, actually, if you want us to go away, we will. We'll go to London. We don't have to be here. Good luck. Good night. Safe on the way home.
So do you mean
we're driving these people away.
So this might be an unpopular thing to posit, but could it be that we actually need to start treating these investors in the way that we treat multinationals?
They actually wanted an
jobs?
IDA for construction investment. That's what they actually wanted, so that someone would articulate in this debate.
That's impossible politically.
That's what I tried to tell them. I said, well, why aren't you standing for election then? You know what I mean? So, can I get to my overall sense of where we're going to end up?
No, we need to hold that for the third section. I need to take another ad break before we get to that. And if you're... Ad breaks are there because if you're not subscribing, the ads pay the bills. If you want to subscribe, you can go to pathtopowerpodcast.com. And of course, if you do subscribe, you will get that extra bonus edition that we will be bringing to you on Sunday afternoon as we do our assessment of the results at that stage to date and what's going to tell us about the formation of government. So we'll come back with lots more after this break. Welcome back to Path to Power. Before we get to your predictions and all
this
the rest
is the overall top-line government formation type stuff,
Save the best wine for last.
No, because it could go sour, but anyway, carry on.
Okay. No, I'm going to put a question to you, and I know you're going to say to me in this, you're going to laugh at me for this question, but here's one for you. Given that we've already indicated the importance of our dependency on the United States of America for foreign direct investment, because it's not just the corporation tax revenues. The vast bulk of the 30 billion a year is going to come from 10 companies and even bulk of it from 5 companies that we have to do everything to actually keep them here and keep them happy. And we have to do also, we worry about, they also bring in an enormous amount of income taxes. I didn't realise this until recently, that, these small bunch of companies produce over half of the income tax as well, because they pay so well compared to everybody else. So we need that. And we have to worry about tariffs from the Trump administration. We need to stay on side with Donald Trump, unfortunately, and his administration. So come March, Patrick's Day, which of our 3 potential Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, Simon Harris, or Mary Lou McDonald, who would you most like to see as being an effective representative of Ireland in dealing with the Trump administration?
Well, first of all, you're presupposing that Trump will do the Patrick's Day shindig. The word I'm hearing is that's not guaranteed. In other words, that there could be a step change in the Céad Míle Fáilte there.
Which would be very bad news for Ireland.
No, they'll all do lots of sycophantic sucking up. I actually believe they're capable of that.
Mary Lou McDonald said to Simon Harris on the debate the other night, she had recently, or was the first debate.
Was it about Gaza?
For not going in and not taking on strongly enough, that she will go in. And I asked her about this during the week, and she said that America would expect Ireland, based on its history, to come in strongly and forcefully defending the rights of people of Palestine.
To say on all of that isn't going to cut any ice with the White House. Now, can I tell you what I think are the big tectonic things?
You're not answering my question.
No, the situation is that
they'll all suck up.
No, they'll all be briefed by the same Ivy House Department of Foreign Affairs mandarins who will have done loads of sucking up.
But our friend Ian Guider has a good idea. Yeah. He says that actually what we need, this is no longer a diplomatic job out of the embassy in Washington. We need the type of person that you would know probably a few of, lobbyists who would actually go to Mar-a-Lago and who would actually wine and dine and suck up to the Trump
and be
people.
looking at the transition team of how you could suck up to them right now. Yeah. Absolutely. Swallow your pride,
if only you flew.
You lost.
If only you flew, you could be sent off to Mar-a-Lago to wine and dine for Ireland.
Can I tell you what I think is going to happen? I think that Fianna Fáil is going to end up between 45 and 50 seats. They're going to be the largest party. And all of this is with the obvious health warnings. I think Sinn Féin is just... You see, remember, even the latest polls, they were taken 6 days ago. I think there's been a momentum.
No, sorry. No, they were done more recently.
Sunday, I heard. Sunday?
Did not go into Monday, no?
Well, we'll put it like this.
Went into Monday.
Voting is Friday, and a day is a long time in politics. I think Sinn Féin will end up in 35-plus territory. I think Fine Gael are on the slide and they'll be in the mid-30s, would be a good result. when Simon Harris took over, one thing Simon Harris has done really badly is internally to manage FG expectations. He was talking about being the largest party in 50 seats and so on. Sorry, what if that doesn't work out? What if we revert to reality? Then will he be blamed? So I think it's a great performance to get to 35, that territory. I think none of the smaller parties are going to get massive traction. They'd be doing really well to get double digits. So now, how do we form a government?
Well, sorry, that's because I'm just doing rough calculations in my head. So at best, if you said Fianna Fáil, if they manage to get to the 50, which is your maximum.
No, I'm saying 45 to 50, yeah. But they're 10 seats ahead of Fine Gael, and what I'm saying, which creates the first crisis, no rotating Taoiseach.
Okay, but then the second thing in relation to that is 50 plus, say, 35 for Fine Gael. You're pretty close to actually having your majority.
Which brings me to the other conclusion.
Which means minority government.
No, because there will be a queue of independents who will be willing to join. No, the question is this. If the two largest parties, as is currently the case in the Dáil, are FF and SF, post Micheál Martin, that won't happen on his watch, is the long-term trajectory in 2029 that we're going to have an FF-SF government or SFFF government, that I don't see Fine Gael getting a sixth term, if you understand me. So I think that's the long-term trajectory of Irish politics. But the no rotating Taoiseach is a real problem for this reason. One, if there isn't party esteem, and if the figures don't dictate to party esteem, Fine Gael's faced with a choice. Every junior partner in government, PDs, Labour, et al., Greens, all are in the mudguard spot. Would Fine Gael say, well, actually, if we don't get a rotating Taoiseach, we'd be better off in opposition? And if that, what sort of political crisis will that cause?
Well, indeed, I think we might have months of stuff to talk about in this podcast. Because I'm just actually thinking of another thing, right? Just go on the lower figures. Say, for example, just say Fianna Fáil gets 45.
Yeah.
Let's say Fine Gael gets 30. They've 75, they're 15 short of what they need. It doesn't look like that there would be one of the smaller parties would have 15 seats. So they might have to bring two parties into coalition with them.
But just on that if you don't give the seat in Louth to Fianna Fáil, it goes to Fine Gael. Right. There has to be one FFG seat. In other words,
the key figure for me is, what's the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael combination going to be?
Okay, I think it's somewhere between 75 and 85.
75 to 85. If it's 75, they're in trouble forming a government as to get another party and maybe some independents. And then there's the issue, if it's 45-30 breakdown, you're right, rotating Taoiseach.
Well, let's be clear about that. There'd be lots of people in opposition who wouldn't precipitate another general election. General elections cost 30 grand a head, and people like 5-year terms. So in other words, theoretically, you could have a government, but to put everything else together would be virtually impossible. So put it like this, I think there's a bigger issue, the dynamic between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, if they are not on a parity of esteem result.
Okay. I wonder
What's your answer to that? Just say there's 10 between them. What do you think will happen?
Well, do you end up in rotating Taoiseach 2/3 of the term of office and 1/3 depending?
Yeah.
They would be looking as well, they'd be saying, is it worthwhile to be Taoiseach at the time of the next election? Or they might look at it and say,
well, Micheál wants it right now.
Will we get
He's not looking at a long-term plan.
I mean, I wonder, could it be that we'll actually have this election, that some sort of government will be cobbled together, and we could have another election in 2 years' time, that we won't get a full cycle?
Absolutely. The law of averages, 1, 80% of all TDs hold their seat. Law of averages, the term is 3.5 years.
Yeah, we've had
2 5-year terms.
Yeah, we've had two unusually
like Bertie
long
actually
terms.
changed it. He started this 5-year terms. When I first went at the Dáil, there was an election every 6 months.
Yeah, well, I wonder, would it actually make more sense? This is just a broader point. If we did have fixed term parliaments. Because, if you say, for example... If
you don't have a majority, like I saw that in the UK, Theresa May went early. You know what I mean? Like fixed term parliaments don't guarantee fixed terms.
So it's pointless.
Yeah, the power of the day can over. So
I wonder, what do you think are going to be, when people... I mean, this podcast will be available to everybody from first thing Friday morning on polling day and the rest of it. I wonder what are going to be the key issues that influence people when they actually go to vote. I know a lot of the time is who you know locally and all the rest of it.
Yeah, 50% is the TD.
Is it going to be change, or is it going to be stability? Is it going to be between those who are satisfied with their lot and those who are dissatisfied at present, who feel that despite the overall economic situation, that they're not getting their share of it? I wonder what are going to be in your view, these are the overarching themes when it comes to people?
Okay, well, first of all, there's two, and like this is absolutely, whoever's narrative wins. The narrative of FFFG is stability, government formation, continuity of a market economy-based approach. The absolute polar opposite narrative, and they're in competition with each other right now, is 100 years of FFG. Give us a chance, give us a change, and we will ensure that. I think one of the things is who is believed on housing. I think housing is the biggest issue. I think that I met a guy who was on the Housing Commission at this thing, and he said, I have 2 adult children with their partners in my own house in Dublin. And like he actually said the problem and the number one recommendation of the Commission was to have this oversight body. You know what they really meant by that? Ripping through the Department of DPER, the Department of the Taoiseach. They feel the senior civil servants get out of bed in the morning and say, we don't really want 60,000 houses. We'll go back to a crash territory, ghost estates and all this kind of thing. They actually believe there isn't the administrative will to do this, and that the politicians are kind of almost collateral damage in all of this.
See, that's what also I wonder why Sinn Féin didn't actually focus more on this. That they previously, Mary Lou MacDonald described part of the civil service as constipated.
Yeah.
And actually came back. And
not bad.
She should have doubled down on that.
Yeah.
When Owen O'Brien criticised an individual in the Department of Finance and was, you can't single out whatever. And maybe they should have stuck by their guns. Maybe what Sinn Féin should have done is that they should have actually promised radical change. We will go in and get rid of the people who we regard both responsible for waste and responsible for inhibiting change.
The other thing, I think Bertie got it right, is like anyone standing back this, if you're of a left-wing disposition, and I'm not, but if you were...
You're not, no?
No, you'd have to say, I'm for enterprise, right? I know, but you'd have to say, like, does it make sense to have Aintu, Sinn Féin, Independence for Change? I'm thinking of the 10-person debate, Labour and Soc Dems all competing. A confused mind doesn't buy, Matt. It's as simple as that. If you have so many brands on the shelf, all believing in a left-wing government, someone has got to sit down and say, and this is what Bertie said, until there's unity of the left, there won't be unity of purpose. And they are absolutely confusing the public in terms of the number of them standing. And they have to face up to this. Just more Me Too. Like, you take Aintu. People would say that Peadar Tóibín has done well. I am struggling. I'm looking at Jim Codd in Rosslare. I'm looking at Sarah O'Reilly in Cavan, and I'm saying, I'm not seeing a second seat for Peadar here, just on the basis of the ground war. And I'm saying to you, like, what have you actually achieved if you end up with one seat? You've just confused the left-wing message.
Yeah. Okay, there's a whole load of
Soc Dems in Labour as well, you know what I mean? Like it just.
Well, I actually put that to them during the week as well. I mean, like.
Cian actually heard that.
Yeah, I mean,
the answer is pretty poor.
Yeah, the answer is, logically, yes, you have to actually come together because it's only difference in emphasis on its tweaking of policies. They both want the same thing. So it's personalities and positions that are allowed to come having a more sizable.
There has to be significant consolidation of the left if they want to make ground.
Is it also interesting, just a couple of things before we finish. I was thinking about this as I was walking down this morning in the rain, that there's no big personalities as such in Irish politics. Now, maybe that's a good thing when you look at the sort of like the Donald Trumps in America.
Yeah.
Or we had Boris Johnson in the UK. But this big sort of defining, I wonder, could somebody emerge in Irish politics?
With a bit of charisma.
With charisma, yeah.
No, but charismatic people like
take
someone like Charlie McCreevy, take someone like Michael O'Leary. The nature of charisma is that you're a bit abrasive. You don't want to be loved, and you call it as it is.
Do you think maybe is there room in Irish politics for that? That has all become too nicey.
Well, I certainly think that a lot of business people, I spoke about the property sector, feel there's no one representing even articulating their point of view. But
sorry, that's an interesting point because for all of the criticism you get from the parties
Des O'Malley
of the left,
point of view,
but parties of the left say, Fine Gael is a right-wing party and Fianna Fáil is near enough to it. That if you look at it by any international
they're all
comparisons,
tax and spend parties. Yeah.
They're not right-wing.
Yeah.
They're not sort of neoliberals or anything like that. And there is actually enormous income redistribution in this country. We already have one of the most progressive income tax systems in the world, despite the criticisms that actually come from those on the left. So to sort of portray Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil as hard and uncaring
and on that,
is not recognised by the people who might want to vote that way.
There was this professor from UCD of social affairs, and he put up the regulatory regime for rented accommodation in Ireland relative. We are far to the left of the Labour government in Britain in terms of the regulation that's already in place, in terms of tenant protections and so on.
Well, is that perhaps maybe because the Labour Party haven't yet made changes in the UK since they got into power from the Tory
maybe
government?
So. We'll put it like this: he put up a slide that showed all the governments, and we were right up there with the most regulated environment, which is what it is. So my final word on this election is that we are going to see huge change in faces. The people that from the Leos and the Coveneys and all this, you're going to see 50 new TDs that some you've never heard of before, and that there will be a sense, not necessarily in government, of a changing of the guard in the public face of Irish politics.
Okay, let's leave it there. If you want more, we have this subscription edition coming
I
this
charge
Sunday.
more on a Sunday. It's triple time on a Sunday. It's union rates, that.
Oh, yeah, like you're a member of a union. Yeah, right. Well, we will have that subscription edition, and if you don't want to pay the minimal monthly fee for that, we will be back again next Friday with our usual weekly free-to-air, free-to-upload edition, which will have our assessment. By that stage, hopefully, the smoke will have cleared and we'll be able to have...
And the only thing they'll all be agreed on, that Ivan Yates, not so much Matt Cooper, is a complete box.
On that note, goodbye.